The other day, I was just in an audio store in Singapore and I was with a friend. So my friend commented that switches does not really matter in IEMs because most of the time it's just kind of pointless. And that kind of inspired me to review an IEM that has some switches. I mean, there are switches in those cheap AF earphones. Those we know that they don't really do much. I'm wondering if this is the case if it's in a more upmarket one. And because of that, today we have the Yanyin Canon Pro on the Super Audio Show, the latest from Yanyin, who is really popular due to their Canon line of products. Starting things off with an unboxing, the Yanyin Canon Pro is quite interesting. The sleeve is really quite boring as it is just very basic and nothing truly special on it. The best part about it is that there isn't any high-res audio logo on it, and because you know the high-res audio logo, it kind of adds performance by 200%, well, not really, does nothing. And below that you get a box, and the coolest part of that box is how it actually opens. There's a hinge at the back of the box and it opens in a very classy manner. I really like fiddling with this, so it's quite fun. And inside it you'll see the hockey puck case, which houses the cables. The case has a Saffiano leather-like pattern on it, and the cable here is actually pretty thick and girthy. I like how the hand feel is on hands when you touch it. It feels very sturdy. And besides that, you have the earphones themselves, as well as two sets of ear tips, which is surprisingly nice and not e-waste. And lastly, you have a box containing some literature and a SIM ejection tool for you to set the various switches. Talking about build quality, the Canon Pro does look nice but doesn't do anything outstanding because it's just a typical black resin chassis that is paired with some glittery faceplate bits. This is nice, but it has been done before for quite a while now, and the Canon does not really venture beyond that point. It looks nice, but it's nothing out of the norm. There are other IEMs that look quite similar to it. For a resin IEM, it is actually pretty well built, but I won't risk my ass on them. I won't sit on them. It's very likely that they break if you do. On the chassis, of course, you get two switches per side. This we'll talk a bit more in the sound department. For driver configuration, the Canon Pro is a 6 balanced armature plus 1 dynamic driver setup. I've got no clue what balanced armature are used, but for the dynamic driver, it has a liquid crystal polymer diaphragm, which is very nice. This was the same material that was used in the Sony EX1000, their flagship from many years past. It features a 2-pin termination, and that is reflected on the cable as well. The cable is made from a single crystal copper that has a total of 140 strands. It is pretty nicely built and feels pretty premium. I personally would like mine to be terminated to a 4.4, but last mine comes in a 3.5mm, which is okay. Ear tips feature on the Canon Pro is very decent as well. I really hate getting e-waste ear tips. That just basically adds no value to the whole packaging product. But thankfully the ear tips here are really quite nice and seriously quite usable. Talking about sound, let's start things off with the switches. Do they actually make a difference? Yes. When you have none on, bass is just simply not impactful at all. It's just very flat bass. But with the first switch turned on, it sounds much better with better body in the music. As for the rest of the permutations, they hardly make a difference in my honest opinion. So for me, while listening to the Yanyin Canon Pro, I would just leave the first switch on and the second switch off, which is actually the default setting. While in theory, switches are nice, but we have never seen an implementation that makes a difference, and the Yanyin Canon Pro is simply no different either. With all switches off, it's not very nice. With one switch on, it is already great, so why not just leave it as one with no switches? It doesn't make a difference anyway. The Yanyin Canon Pro is a classic V-shaped sounding IEM that has tonality like that of a typical hybrid design. Bass is done by the dynamic driver, while everything else is handled by the 6 balanced armatures. This isn't groundbreaking when it comes to tone, but I must say that it does a very good job and renders music very pleasantly. It is a comforting signature that is kind of like a bowl of chicken soup, familiar and comforting. So for this review, I'll be using my very handy Lotto Paw GT2, which has a reference signature and will not color the Canon Pro. It has more than enough juice to power the Canon Pro. Talking about bass is balanced satisfyingly in relation to the other frequency range. It isn't excessive nor is it anemic. Finely balanced for a large range of genres. Also, to add to that, I found that dynamics to be good, and when called upon, they actually do deliver. Especially in tracks where the music can get a bit busy, such as rock, dynamics tend to suffer a bit in these genres as they are pretty compressed sounding as well, but the Yanyin Canon Pro does inject some dynamics into the mix. Bass texture on the Canon Pro exhibits good responsiveness when it comes to the resonance. It does not really bleed into the mids and maintains a very clean response. I like how the dynamic driver renders bass, as there is just this pop to tone only available through a dynamic driver. Mid-range, vocals on the Canon Pro is clear and it adds just this little bit of warmth and is really tastefully done. I was just listening to this song by Yellowcard, 1 year 6 months, the acoustic version, which is by definition more mid-centric because of the acoustic guitars and violins going on in the background. On the Canon Pro, it is simply sublime. You get to hear the melody, the vocals so well defined and harmonizes so well with the supporting vocals. The best part is that when you have the voices singing the harmony, it still keeps its character and you can hear it quite distinctively. So you can hear the main melody and harmony very clearly. Resolution is great on the Canon Pro and it adds a lot of character to vocals and instruments alike. Treble extension here extends very naturally, almost seamless. A very good effort by Yanyin. It allows the Canon Pro to sound bigger than it actually is, and it gives a very good perception of space and height. Soundstage. Firstly, when it comes to width and height, very good performance on both fronts, better if your music is recorded properly. Depth and positioning. The dynamic driver here does a good job in creating depth through the dynamics. Positioning is also rather pinpoint and also very competitive amongst the competition, and it's just very clear where the voices, the instruments are coming from. And of course, I'll be comparing the Yanyin Canon Pro against some of its competition such as the 7Hz Aurora. The Aurora is the flagship from 7Hz and it sports a mesmerizing faceplate. It has quite an interesting timbre. I like how the Aurora renders bass as it is just very versatile and authoritative compared to the Canon Pro. It has more dynamics, it hits a bit harder. However, when it comes to the timbre of the Canon Pro versus the Aurora, I prefer the Canon Pro as it is more lifelike and smooth. The Aurora is very highly detailed, but there is a tinge of metallicness when it comes to the overall tone. So between the two, really, I think the high resolution is probably the 7Hz Aurora, but if you want something that is more complete, go for the Yanyin Canon Pro. Next up, versus the Moondrop Dusk. After the dust has settled on the Dusk, I prefer the Canon Pro over the Moondrop Dusk. The reason is as such. The Canon Pro is just more dynamic sounding and renders mids with higher resolution by comparison. The Canon Pro is just simply more comfortable to listen to as well, although I must say that the faceplate on the Dusk is actually really rather beautiful. So next, let's talk about ratings. So bass is really excellent and has very nice dynamics. It gets an 8. Mid-range, well, vocals and instruments are very beautifully rendered. It gets a 7.5. Treble is smooth and has very good detail, 7.5. When it comes to resolution, it resolves fine details very well. It gets a 7.5. Soundstage, honestly, it has a very good size and has very nice depth and positioning, so it gets a 7.5. And lastly, the most important point, the enjoyment factor. I really enjoyed the Yanyin Canon Pro a lot. It's very complete for me and I could use it for almost everything. It gets an A+. And in conclusion, the Yanyin Canon Pro is an excellent IM at its price point. I found it amazing sounding on the whole and will suit a large ton of genres as a result. Resolution is also plenty good. Not perfect though, as I would have liked a more interesting chassis and a more meaningful switch implementation because the switches really does not do much. It is just basically, well, if you turn down all the switches, it's no bass, and when you turn one switch up, it is basically the set signature. It doesn't change much with the permutation, so yeah. However, that said, it is still an excellent IEM that will please many. With that said, thank you so much for watching the Super Chong Super Audio Show. I hope you guys have been well. I've been a bit sick, as you can hear from my voice. It's not the usual. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you guys soon.